Hi, JJ. Welcome to the Everyday Mystic. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast.
Oh, I love this podcast. Thanks, Corissa.
I'm so excited to have you here because just, pre-record, we were talking about how you in your life, in your own ways, want to normalize mysticism and normalize what it means to even be a mystic, be called a mystic. It sounds like such a far off concept, but that's exactly what my mission is to do and why I launched this podcast to normalize not only mysticism, but spirituality and our connection to source and our connection to ourselves as divine beings. So thank you for being here and also for showing up in the world, doing that in your ways.
Thank you so much. It's exciting. It's exciting to know we're at a time on the planet where this is going to be such a critical part of so many people's journeys.
Right. So tell us about your journey because you definitely didn't start here. This wasn't, you didn't come from a mystical leaning family. I don't believe it was a later in life type of discovery for you.
Well, yeah, so I've had some major awakenings over the last decade, but I had glimpses early on. My mom, my aunt, my grandmother used to go to a place called Lilydale, which is outside of Western New York.
Yes.
Yes, and it's written up. Even Lisa Ling has done an episode on it. It's a place for mediums. And so when I was young, like 9, 10, 11, 12, my aunts would go there once a summer and they would get a reading and we would sit on the stumps. And so it
Oh,
wasn't abnormal to us, but we definitely didn't talk about it.
interesting. Okay, so you actually, within your mom and her sister's side, they were into this kind of thing. But so that's interesting. So they would go get their own readings, but you didn't discuss it. Did it seem taboo? Is that why?
Well, we definitely hid it from people that we went there. And anyone that we told was always like, oh, that's ridiculous or whatever. And they just chose not to tell people. I mean, we would talk about it on the way there and the way home, and we'd get excited for the next trip. But it wasn't something that we talked about on a regular basis. And it's not really even something I tapped into fully, over the last almost decade now. I've been doing it much more fully, but I was exposed to it early on, which I do not think was an accident.
No, nothing ever is, right?
Exactly.
So you were in your adulthood churning along with a successful career, family, and what happened? What opened you up to this spiritual path?
Yeah. So when I turned 40, I just turned 50. So when I turned 40, I just knew I needed some guidance. I was buzzing along in my tech career. I worked most of my career out of Silicon Valley. I loved it. I traveled the world with it. I just had a really wonderful life, but I had an inner turmoil that would not quit. And I talk a lot about this in my third book because my first two books were really about women in business and how to maneuver the professional landscape. But my third book, Seeking, is really about the work I've had to do from the inside out. And even if everything is going in the right direction, you may still have such inner turmoil that you can't deny, but also can't really figure out on your own. And when my 40th birthday was coming around, I mentioned to my husband that I needed to go get some clarity. And I was looking all over, and I actually ended up landing in Sedona for a soul adventure, SOUL, a soul adventure. And it was there that I was told through different practitioners that my life was going to be more spiritual than I expected, and that I was going to do a lot about talking about light, talking about God, and really doing more of that work, which when they told me that, I couldn't understand it and I almost denied it because I was working in corporate America and I literally couldn't even breathe the word God, let alone talk about it. And I didn't at that point think I was ever going to leave corporate America because I really enjoyed it. But left for me like the little seed drops then that my life was going to take a hard right turn.
And did it immediately take that turn, or what did it? Yeah, what did it take for you to, I guess, fully accept the light and God and this path into your life?
Yeah, a lot was happening in my life. Like a lot was happening inside of work and outside of work. I was constantly trying to figure out like where should I push my energy. I had a lot of energy, and I knew I was here for something bigger, but I could not figure it out. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to get this? Like, where am I supposed to be running to? I just knew I had such a big calling, but I could not figure it out.
Mm.
And at that point, I was 40. It took me another year or so to leave my corporate job, but I had a lot of things in underway. I started a women's group in 2008 on my own that has now, almost 10,000 women in technology. And then I was asked to start the corporate women's group. And then I wrote my first book in 2010. So things were happening, but I just still was not figuring out like where I should throw my energy 100%.
Hmm. Yeah. So you were already doing some things on your own and building a brand, and building yourself outside of your corporate career. It just wasn't taking on the actual form that it has now.
Well, and it wasn't like I was thinking like I'm building a brand. I was thinking I was trying to hold on.
Mm.
I had two young kids. I had a really demanding job. And I just didn't know, like, I just felt lost sometimes in my choices. And I needed people more than I ever had. And I turned to other women that also had really high demanding careers in tech. And I brought them together not because I was trying to do something amazing. I literally was just trying to keep myself sane. I felt like I
Yeah.
just was making so many choices and I lost myself in my yeses and I just didn't know how to get myself back in the right space. Little did I know I was like starting these communities, but it wasn't because I was like, oh, I want to start a community. I was like, I need help. I need to understand how women 5, 10, 15 years ahead of me had figured this out because it's super hard to have kids and work in corporate America and have like a really senior role and travel the world. And everyone says you can do it, but really it's incredibly difficult.
Hmm. Yeah. So it was almost like a saving grace for you to just build this community that was there to, you were all there to support each other. Wow, what a beautiful thing. And I think that is so true of really all good healing is that, if you're going to bring something into the world, it is typically something that is coming from your own inner calling, right? It's your soul saying, hey, this is something for you. This is something you need. This is something you need to put out there because you need it first. And I always go back to that analogy, metaphor of the oxygen mask of, you're on a plane and, if you've got someone there who needs you, you're going to put your own oxygen mask on first before you tend to that person. And it's such a great metaphor for life, especially for women where you're working the career, also trying to take care of your kids and home. And we can get lost in that, I think, quite easily. And if there isn't that separation, now I have a situation where, as soon as I went into corporate, my husband came home. So we flipped. We had a company together, but he had a corporate job. And when I got my corporate job, he took over our business and came home and then stayed home when we decided to have a child. So that balance is a little different where I didn't experience the same thing of like two working parents outside the home. I'm the mom who has to hold everything down there and also be working. But I certainly know the struggle from so many friends and so many women that I've worked with and spent time with. For you, when you when you started this group, did it have any type of spiritual edge to it, or was it just, kind of, ladies, let's get together and dish and, and support each other and network?
Well, it's interesting because I wrote the book from that first group. So my very first book, The Working Woman's GPS, When the Plan to Have It All Leads You Astray, was the result of all the stories and lessons I learned from women that came together. And in that book, I talk a lot about energy. And I didn't really think about it like a spiritual thing. I was just thinking about it like sometimes you have really low energy and sometimes you have high energy. So how do you manage your energy? So
Mhm.
it just had a real energy spin. And GPS and the title, the Working Woman's GPS, stood for Goals, Purpose, Self. And it really was a book and is a book for women that have young kids that are trying to maneuver their choices. And I didn't even market my first book because I had a real job, as I would say then. And I didn't want them to think I wasn't taking that job seriously. So
Yeah.
I didn't market it at all. And it was just word of mouth. I started getting invited to women's groups and different discussions. And that's when women used to start said to me, how do I get promoted? How do I find a sponsor? How do I get that job that I keep, hoping to get, but it never materializes? So I took all of those questions and I wrote them all down and I researched all them, not really thinking I was going to write another book. I thought I'd do a workshop, but I went on a trip with a girlfriend, a biking trip. We went biking for 6 days and I wrote the book in my head. And so 4 or 5 years later, this is 4 or 5 years later, I came back and wrote that second book, which then took me on a whole another journey of really teaching women the difference of working in your career and on your career, because there's a very significant difference. And at that point, I thought I really should have, I thought I was there. I thought okay, I checked all these boxes. I did all this stuff. I should feel really good. But in reality, I was just really just hitting the cusp of how much I was going to have a tower moment. Everything kind of just started crumbling around me at a time where I thought I was where I was supposed to be, which of course I was where I was supposed to be,
Mhm.
but I did not expect or anticipate that tower moment, which then turned into a year or more of real deep self-discovery.
Mm. Such a gift when everything is falling apart around you, isn't it? It's such
Well,
an
it doesn't feel like
opportunity.
it when you're in it, but if you
No.
have the tools to be reflective and appreciative and recognize that everything happens for you and not to you, you then can see that was perfectly orchestrated, as you were saying.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing to have, I guess it's the retrospection and also the tools. You had tools that you had collected, it sounds like, over the years, and it just hadn't all maybe gelled into this set of practices or way of being and living. But it sounds like you had some really powerful tools to work with. You were just applying them in different ways. And but to be able to recognize the a crisis as actually a call of the soul, and to look at something that feels like such a challenge as an opportunity is everything, right? It's just change of perspective, change of mindset that completely changes everything, right?
Well, yes, yes, but I'm stubborn and I'm an A plus plus personality, so I want to plow through everything. And so I actually ended up in a therapist's office.
Yeah.
And I was like, what in the heck is going on? I thought I was going to have all this joy. I thought this was going to happen. And she said after the third meeting, you really need to go to mindfulness training. And I was just so
Mm.
annoyed. I was like, listen, I've got serious issues here. I don't, this mindfulness sounds like goofiness. I'm not going there. So it was the mindfulness training. And I feel like that therapist was a guide for me, nudging me in the direction I needed to go at the time. And I was stubborn. It took me a couple times of going there before I even really started the full course, because I just could not wrap my mind around what they were trying to teach us and how that was going to work. And so I would say that one of my very key life lessons is really understanding mindfulness.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's a beautiful testimony to the work, the spiritual path that your stubborn earthly persona was able to be, penetrated to the point of where you could accept the gifts and accept, essentially the word of God and the word from your angels, and be guided. That is beautiful. So such a testament to what this path, if it's not just one thing, but as to just call it one thing, what that can really do. So is it that you started to feel changes and get positive results from the mindfulness or from the things you were doing, so you ended up trusting it more? Or what did it take for you to break that stubbornness?
I think desperation. I think I got to a point in my life where I realized that what I was doing was not working and that I need to lean into what I am guided towards. And so the mindfulness, I had an amazing mindfulness teacher that was incredibly patient, but also stern in her own way. And she kind of pulled me aside and was like, what are you doing here? Like, you don't seem like you want to be here. What are you doing? And like, I really had to figure out, like, am I going to lean into this or not? And I was asking, well, why would I do this? Like, what are the benefits? Why would I want to do this? And she was just very purposeful in her answers and how it sort of shifts the way you live. And it allows you to live a life of observation and appreciation, and you will likely have more joy. And with the results that she laid out, it was a little bit easier for me to lean into the mindfulness training, because I was like, well, if that's really the case, then maybe there is something to this. Because I think the word mindfulness, it's like, I don't know, if for someone who doesn't know what mindfulness is, it kind of sounds pretty goofy, or just like not really of much of anything, or just kind of what people do on a hill. But in reality, mindfulness gives you the ability to unhook from your ego energy, your ego conversation, and it gives you the ability to be an observer of how you move through life. And it gives you the ability to have space to understand and really decide how you want to participate in any one moment.
Yeah. And for me, I would call that the soul's perspective, that you
Sure.
are looking upon your life and upon your habits and upon, all the constructs that become who you are or who you think you are over all that time. But you realize as the deeper you go that that's not who you really are, right? That you're really this soul beneath the all of those constructs and that programming. And so mindfulness, just like any of these practices that allow us to tune in, I believe, tune out some of the, whether it's noise or, programmed language and, this is what it means to be successful. Like that, even that is a program, right? That we are taught of this is what it means. You do this, you earn this, you get this title, you make this money, you have, 2.1 children, whatever, right? We have a formula that as much as we don't think we are consciously hooked in, to use the word you used earlier, to that, we are absolutely impacted. I mean, that is how we are raised. We're raised to within certain societal constructs. So to break all that down and to like get into your own mind and then later get down into your soul and really feel and operate from that place is so freeing. So let me ask you this. Did you gain those results that the mindfulness teacher said, this is what you're going to get from this?
Oh my gosh, that and so much more. So much more. I mean, I live a whole different way in life. I participate as a totally different type of human on the planet now. And I realized I had a lot of things I had to let go of, a lot of stories I was carrying with me, a lot of energies. And I go through many of this in my third book, Seeking, of all the steps I had to take to sort of decouple what you're talking about is this oasis of success that so many of us are brainwashed into believing. And even the whole family structure, right? So many of us have like these stories and all this thing that can hold us back in so many ways and really taint us from really stepping into our full energy and really diving into our soul. And I go very deeply into that decoupling of the ego energy so that you can get into the soul energy later in the book. And I talk about the 50 or so energy practitioners I have worked with that have really helped me work through my own energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that is what we started talking about initially, is how we can really leverage the mysticism in us and in others to help us lighten our load and really move through life as an experience or a journey that we create, not that that is thrown upon us. And so I think that's really the beauty that was activated through mindfulness training.
Mm. From there, from that first foray into mindfulness training, it sounds like you've also done a lot of other works with all these other energy practitioners. So, um, did you end up going to these for the purpose of I want to someday share this, or did you even know that you were on that path?
No, I didn't. I really was just trying to remove all the darkness. And I wouldn't say that I would walk around as a doom and gloom by any means, but that I just kept saying, I want to be a lighthouse. I want to shine so much light out. And to do that, I have to kind of dig through my own stories and darkness. I need to clean out my vessel. I kept telling everyone, I'm trying here to clean out my vessel. And I didn't even know why some energy workers I would visit. I was just called to them, or they would cross my desk, or I wanted to learn about it. And over a series of years, I just got to learn so many different practices while I was learning more about myself.
Mm.
And then I would talk about that, and people would say, well, who did you go to? Or what did they do? And felt myself like sharing all these contacts, which now I've made this a lot simpler. I've created a new community that I now interview many of the energy practitioners and light workers that I work with and give them an opportunity to share their stories so people can connect directly with them.
Mhm.
And my goal is really just to show that there are plenty of resources in the world to help you work through whatever you're struggling with. And whatever you're struggling with, as you have already mentioned, is really a gift for you to kind of level up and get to that next level. But sometimes you just can't do it alone. You really need to call on other mystics and other energy practitioners, or what I call light workers, people that share their light with you, to kind of move through the energy. And a lot of that energy comes down to the stories that our ego is feeding us on a regular basis.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and it's incredible when you start to actually unpack those stories and realize that you are and have been enslaved by them, that you are that you are uh, who you think you are is just this set of stories. And you're like, who even told me that story? Wait a minute. This story was not something that I created. It's
Yeah.
something that someone else created, or circumstances that weren't even within your control at the time. And yeah, it's fascinating to look at life through story and then get on the other side of it and start to write your own stories. And I think it's even interesting to work with, your the past in, and I will tell people this, it's not that you're changing the facts of the past, you're changing your energetic reaction and your responses, and even sometimes your memories then of the past, by changing the energetics of it. And that will free you so much from some of that torment that may have been enslaving you, or even just some of the limiting behaviors, beliefs that may have kept you limited. So it's a powerful practice to explore stories and then get into this place of rewriting. And you, in writing these books, it sounds like writing for you has been a really beautiful practice. Not only, is it you end up with these great books for other people, but was it for you also cathartic and also healing and also a process of unfolding?
Oh, absolutely. And I know my human design is really about trial and error. So I'm out there trying all this stuff and then bringing the best practices back to others. And I would say anyone who's read any of my books, they're full of tools and strategies and activities that can help you do similar transformations, whether you want to, get a promotion, or you want to, really work through the inside to really determine what's next for you on the outside. And I feel like it's really just a combination of all kinds of articles and practitioners and strategies that I have picked up along the way. And writing the book for me is very, very lethargic, in a sense that it gets everything out that I could possibly share on the topic so that you could have your own experience.
Yeah. And isn't that the way of the mystic, to have your own experience of the mystical, of the divine, and that connection? And it's like we can't create those experiences for other people. It's like you can shine the light, you can write the book and provide information, you can be there and I always have this vision of, the I'm shining a light on a path. But if I were to take the light away, doesn't mean the path disappears, right? The path is always there for that person. It's just like, oh, I'm shining the lantern on the path. And they're like, oh, okay, this is where I go. I'm also not guiding them down that path. I'm just shining the light there.
Mhm.
And, certainly some of the things that we can share as those of us who've been through it, we can share our experiences and share the wisdom gained and share tips and practices and beautiful things like this. But ultimately, it's in the hands and heart and the soul of that person to choose to take those steps, choose to step into, right, into their um, deeper places, whether it's the deeper, darker places or just the deeper, beautiful, light filled places. So, what's your take on that as far as working with people or someone, or makes someone that might come to you that's just maybe they were stubborn like you were back in the past? How do you meet that person that was that might be a little more closed to the enlightenment?
Well, I definitely don't believe in accidents. So if somebody makes their way to me, then I feel like there's something they're going to teach me, or I'm going to teach them, or we're going to journey together. I I feel like things now for me are much more frequency driven. I spend a lot of time managing my frequency, which I sort of touched on in my first book, but didn't really know what I was talking about then. Even though I can go back and still get relevant data points, now I truly understand the whole field of energy. And I've probably read 100 books. I've been to over 100 practitioners, and I host a lot of my own experiences with all these women that I gather, because so many of us women have sort of stepped aside from our knowing. And, I think that the mystic in a lot of ways is all of us. I mean, we all are part of the mystic, right? We're all part of the bigger light. We all are teardrops of something much larger than ourselves that are come into our bodies, and we become humans, but we are all connected by that light.
Yeah.
And I think people get afraid of tapping inside because so many practices and organizations have told us not to do that, that they will show us the way, and they have programmed it and they've deprogrammed us from recognizing how we can connect with the bigger light from within. And I feel like it's funny how many people will tell me, well, I'm religious. Well, I can't do that because I'm religious. And it just makes me laugh, because I feel for them, because they are the light first, they are human second, and practices they choose as a human is third. So when they tell me that they're religious, I totally respect that. But the fact that you are part of the light first, that is your default. And you may or may not recognize that you actually are already light, and that
Yeah.
you are already God. But it's like you have to seek that out in a way that you often go through a really kind of interesting journey to get there. And the people that are ready for that embark on that, and the ones that aren't. And either way is fine. It doesn't really matter if you are ready or you're not. But I will tell you that the ones that are ready, and that maybe are listening to this message and being like, wait, what a minute, what is she saying? Light, God, how is she connected? Like, you're ready for it. So really leaning into what that may look like for you, um, is really fantastic. And I'm always like, pay attention to what's happening in front of you, because God is leading you all the time, and God's angels are really around you in every way. And I think the book Seeking for me is really just something that I can give to people to take a look at and read, even chapter by chapter, or jump around. But I feel like it is the knowing that I have gathered along the way that they can tap into any chapter or any key finding, um, to really start embarking on their next level of awakening.
Yes. Yes. I love books like that where you can just jump in. And so I've been reading it, and this is the book Seeking by JJ. How do you pronounce your last name?
DiGeronimo.
DiGeronimo. Okay. As it sounds or it looks. And Because there's so many exercises in here, I think what's beautiful about a book like this, I mean, you can see in here, it's like it's prompts, 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 prompts to work through for yourself, right? That this is not just a woman, a light worker telling you what to do, but it is her prompting you to ask yourself what to do. Ask yourself for those answers. So books like hers really are are such a beautiful way to work with your own energy, work with your own soul. And I love this because it can be worked through in so many ways. So many people I think have problems writing in books. Maybe it's just this, oh, a book is you keep it as pristine, like, but you give permission, right? To like write in the book. You've got the lines, you've got the spaces. It's great. And I'll write in books, that don't even have those prompts because, there's things in there energetically that you want to align with and remember or be called back to. So a book like this, I think is wonderful, not just for the first time through, but then it's you write, you work through for me, that would be the second time through. I would go through, I'm reading it and then I would go back and then go through and actually really interact and spend time with everything. And then the third and then infinitesimal times after that, you go back and just flip in, right? And go, oh, this is what's here for me today. And oh, look what I wrote and look who I was at that moment. And with these reminders of exactly what you needed in the now moment, but that you shared in this past moment. It's just, messing with time, I think, too, in that way of where you're really able to tap into the full field of knowing. And then you've got something tangible and solid that you can use as that lighthouse to as your metaphor or an anchor point for you. So I just love the way you put that together.
Thank you. Yeah. And I would say that I do it in conjunction with the universe. So I can't even believe I don't even know. I'm amazed by it too. But, I think a lot of us is leaning into our whispers as if you have a calling or you have something that's really been on your heart to really lean into that, make the phone call, do the research, investigate people that are also doing that around the planet. I feel like so many of us get little whispers as I have. I got a whisper in 2006 to start that women's group. I didn't start it until 2008 because I was like, well, who am I? And who's going to come and what would I do? And honestly, it ended up being just like a happy hour, very little effort. And it brought me so much joy and light. And I've had this time and time again in my life where I get these whispers. And my first reaction is always like, oh, like even I was leaving Mount Shasta a couple of years ago. And as I was leaving, I was looking back on the mountain and I was just literally marveling at how stunning the mountain was. And I got the message, bring the mystics together.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh, you've got the wrong car. Like, who in the world is going to, like, I wasn't even in the place yet where I was actually bringing all the mystics together. And I was like, yeah, no, wrong car. You're probably the car behind me. That's probably not my message. And I got it 3 more times as I was driving the San Francisco airport that evening. And I just had no idea what it meant, but I kept getting women saying, who did you go to for this? And do you know someone who does past life regression or QHHT? Or do you know somebody who does, TRE or tapping or, there's just a slew of different mystics out there that do all kinds of things. And I felt myself constantly writing these emails. I'm like, I got to make this easier for myself. So I created this community, Together We Seek. And I invited the mystics I use, and then I started interviewing them. And so now instead of me sending emails to everyone like, oh, call Carol, call Sarah, call Jen, I say, go into the community, do a search on all the videos, find out who resonates with you. Because it really is a personal journey, and not the people that resonate with me aren't going to resonate with the next person or the next person. And it's like, really, my goal is just to bring light to all of these people that I work with, because I feel like they've done the work to tap into their gifts, and their gifts are here to elevate the feminine energy of the planet. And so finding who and how to do that for yourself is your journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And, I think there are people who would prefer a formula and prefer to, have people do it for them. And that's what makes this journey much more, of a warrior's journey. It's like being a spiritual warrior. You really have to have some of that energy of courage and just going to go out there and get this. And go and seek this. And it's not something that's handed to you, right? It's not readily available. There's so much to work through, and if you're not willing to do the work, then you are usually not provided the gifts. It's like they're there. It's all there for everybody to access. It's just does require work, and that
Yeah,
work
and I
can
think
be
that's
a
what
bit
seeking is
daunting.
really meant to be. The book Seeking has a certain frequency. It's a frequency. The book is a frequency. It's like one of those books that you get if you're ready for it.
Yeah.
And the work Book Seeking is like really your first tool to just understand where you need to do the work, because it lays out like so many of the hurdles that so many women are um are really working through or are sitting on. And I go through everything from your relationship with your mother to your relationship with money to, how you receive and exchange energy. Do you creating galactic chips? Are you really kind of swimming in your own negativity? It's like an entire spectrum of things that hold women back. And I've gathered those through the last decade of doing all these keynotes and working in these women's groups. I've seen so many different stories and hurdles. And so I've really tackled as many as possible in the book in a way that really helps women understand what are the things that are holding them back from leaning into their own whispers. And I think it's a great place to start because it gives you a really like kind of montage of stuff to kind of look at to say, yeah, where do I need to do the work? And then there's the resources and the women in the book that I've worked with along with the community. So I'm really trying to provide people with an opportunity to explore at the speed that they're ready. Because as I remind everybody, you have chosen to be here right now. And if you are called to do the inside work, it's very likely that you are here for a bigger mission.
Mhm.
And now, or whenever you're called to do it, is the time that is really kind of your opportunity to kind of take off your shields, take off the layers so that you can let your light shine.
Mhm. Yeah. And I do agree with you. And I actually just shared this on a podcast I was on 2 days ago about the following, and continuing to question, if you have this question in your mind of, oh, what is a light worker? Oh, I want to find out more about it, right? It's like follow that curiosity. The questions and the curiosity are there for you. They are part of the breadcrumbs or part of those whispers that are leading and guiding us back to ourselves, our souls. And it's the tuning in and listening to all of that then provides the actual wisdom and the knowing. So tuning into intuition, that's a big, big, big one, because obviously that is our ways and means of listening into God, right? Listening to source. What are one, two, three tips that you would give somebody for tuning in to their intuition?
There's three things that I always talk about with people is, to really, because you have to manage your energy. Because if you're going to really do this type of work, your energy and the energy exchange is really the most important thing. And you only can know that if you're mindful and you're paying attention to how you move through the world. So the easiest thing to do is to kind of pay attention to what you pay attention to. So what are you watching? What are you reading? What are you listening to? Because oftentimes, that's going to impact your energy. So if you're listening to CSI or murder mysteries or that kind of stuff and scaring the crap out of yourself and thinking, everyone's around every corner and, that is going to impact your energy. So I really have had to strip myself of a lot of shows and movies and I'm an empath and highly sensitive. So I cannot separate the energy of on screen or in a book compared to me. So I really have to get rid of a lot of stuff that's going to impact my energy, like take it down, scare me, make me fearful. Like I really have to remove all of that. That's kind of like an easy thing to do is just kind of monitor, what are you watching? What are you listening to? What are you paying attention to? The more difficult piece is really, how are you talking to yourself and how are you talking to others, even if you're not sharing it. So what's happening on the inside? Like, are you beating yourself up on a regular basis? Or are you saying, I hear you, ego, but I'm going to work through that on my own? And I have that. I beat myself up too. And I have to, like, a couple months ago, someone taught me to name it. So I name it a name, which I'm not going to share because I don't want anyone's name out there to be that name. So I name it. I give her a name and I just say, hey, listen, so and so, I got this. Because your ego is really here to protect you, but it does go into overdrive, and it will protect you in times you really don't need to be protective. And you don't really understand that unless you're mindful of what you're saying to yourself on a regular basis, so that you can decipher whether or not you want to listen to that ego energy. Generally, you don't really need to most of the time. And so how do you kind of separate that conversation from how you feel about yourself? Because as I said, anytime I got the whispers, the first thing I said to myself was why I couldn't do it, or why I wasn't ready, or who did I think I
Yeah.
was? When in reality, I was perfectly ready. The universe is not going to give you things you're not ready for. So you need to be able to sidestep that conversation in your head to give you space to check it out.
Yeah. Yeah. It took me a long time to accept my, uh, what I'll just lump in as psychic gifts, but really it is just tapping into the fields of energy and being able to tune in on different energetic frequencies, that are unseen or unheard, with our five senses. And, I know that makes psychic power sound more complicated, but it's the term psychic, I think, is so loaded. I don't usually use that, but it is, really being able to gain more information than what we gain through our five senses. And that took me a really long time to accept and allow in to because I'm like, well, I've never, you know, worked with a master teacher on this, and I've never been trained in this, and I've not. It's just, we all have the capability and the openings to be tapped into this bigger, wider field, deeper fields of information. And it's just getting out of your own way, right? Getting out of your own way, and stopping all of that limiting talk that somehow we're not either ready or we're not worthy, and that we need to do something. We are ready because we're here. We're ready because we have been given the whisper, just like you said. The universe isn't going to provide that without, your readiness. And so but then, right, we still have choice whether we're going to step in or not, and accept those gifts or not, which I still think is, nothing's ever going to take you over. And maybe, there's some fear around that for some people, that, oh, this is going to take over my life, and this is going to, I'm not going to be able to filter anything anymore, or I'm not going to be able to be in reality. And that is another big part of being an everyday mystic, in my mind, and the way I define it, is that you can be working with those energies, speaking to God, working on all these different energetic planes, and yet be very grounded and be very much in this reality. And even more so, co-creating this reality through that whole process. And to get to that place is so empowering. So in just, what I have read so far of your book, it is very empowering. One, because of the you are here within this book to share the answers from you. That's empowering in and of itself. Of, oh, okay, she's not just giving me all the information. I have to seek that within me, and I'm going to put those things down, and write those things out. Um, but it's also empowering in the actual key findings that you've discovered, that you've laid out, that are, there in a, it's systematic, but it is also, could be, you don't have to go from 1 to 74, right? So for you, what stands out for you, as some of your biggest key findings from this, the things that really impacted you the most, that were, Um,
Gosh.
yeah, I'm
I
sure
mean,
they
all
all
of them
did.
are, I think the number 74, if you go to the end of the book, I work with a numerologist at the end that talks about the number 74. And when you get through the book and you read the different 74s, I mean, people have called me after they've read the book. They've left a job after 24 years. They've become a yoga teacher. They've stepped into some of the gifts that they always denied themselves because some sibling or parent told them never to do it. And now they're exploring it. So, I mean, for me, the book is really just a co creation of the universe to help people lean into what is calling them. And, different days, different key findings mean something to me. A lot of teachers are using the book and just using it almost like oracle cards, where you just open up a page because there's so many nuggets throughout. But I will tell you that I never thought I would be here. It wasn't like when I was 5 years old and 7 years old, I thought I would be bringing the mystics together. This is something that I have leaned into over the last 15 to 20 years, and every step got me closer to this step. And when I was in Miami Beach in 2017, I went to a birth chart reader, which I have since learned birth charts, which is so interesting because it gives you a little bit of more of a roadmap of why you're on the planet. But the birth chart reader told me, in 2023, all of this will start to come together. And I started crying because I had been working so hard to figure out who I was and what I was doing. And the thought of going from 2017 to 2023 was like mind numbing. I'm like, I can't wait that long. Like, that's too far away. But now we're in 2023, and I'm thinking I needed every single one of those steps to get me right here, right now. And had I skipped any one of those lessons, any one of those meetups, any one of those disappointments, I would not have the strength for what is ahead for me, which is beyond what I could have ever imagined for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful, and such a great reminder for people that we're, living within also this set of divine timing, of what our soul is here to do and ready for, and there's preparation and there's work to be done in order to get to this place of where that is and becomes, because it's always a possibility, but I think we have to also cure the possibility by taking certain steps to get to and open up that door, because we are infinite possibilities. I mean, right? We could absolutely, go in any direction, but it is the direction that our soul is taking us to and through in this life um is, I think, has that set of, there's a divine timing that we are living within, and then there's also the work that is done, the work that we must do as the human to open the doors, open the doors, open the doors, and continue to go down the right and into the right doors for us to end up in the right place. It's like a fun house. It's not always so fun, but it is ultimately such a ride, such a beautiful journey to experience this fullness. And that's the other thing I think, which I love about your approach and about you, is that you're accepting not only the beautiful gifts and all of the wonderful light-filled bliss, but also the work of it, and the hardships of it, and the missteps. Those things, understanding that those are all part of the path. They're all part of the knowing and the unfolding. And without it, like you said, you wouldn't be where you are today and be prepared enough for what's to come. That's such a beautiful way to put it. It's like, it is I always picture in my mind, I have that like forging steel. It's like you put it in the fire, and then you take it out and you meld it and mold it, and then you put it back in, and you continue to do this in order to actually create this beautiful gleaming piece of whatever it is, weaponry, or some piece that you're going to use in this world. And that is a process, not a one and done type of thing. So for those who want the easy path or want the easy way out, this isn't going to be it, but it is so satisfying and so joy filled. You mentioned joy earlier, that was one of the things your mindfulness teacher had promised you in this, mindfulness work. It said, this is a way to that joy. Do you feel like you now have that easy access to joy that you maybe didn't have before?
Oh, definitely. Because I don't wait for the big things to happen. A lot of us are waiting for an experience, a concert, a travel trip, a night out with somebody. That's not where I search for joy anymore. I search for joy in the wind,
Mm.
the birds, the phone calls of people, the unexpected people that call me that are a major connection to the next piece of my learning or journey. And I think there's joy in a lot of things that happen because I'm so much more in the present moment, which I never was the first 30 years of my life. I was so busy planning for what was ahead or reflecting on the past. And I didn't know how to get out of that type of mentality or that type of life. And mindfulness was really the teachings that gave me that space, the teachings of John Kabat-Zinn that gave me the space to recognize that the present moment is the only moment we have.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? What would you like to leave people with today? If there were, whether it's something on your heart in the moment or a bigger, wider message in general, what would you like to say and leave people with?
Well, I don't believe in accidents. So if you're with us right now, like this message is as much for you, and what you took out of the message is exactly what you were supposed to hear. And that there are people around you all over the planet that can help you illuminate your own path. And I think leaning into what is calling you, or paying attention to what keeps crossing your path, or even exploring what interests you is the gift you can give yourself.
Mhm. Keep following those whispers, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, JJ. This has been a
Thank
beautiful conversation. Thank you so much for the book. I'm excited to dig in and actually start to put my thoughts in writing and allow my soul to just write up this book all over the
you.
place. Where can people get it?
They can get it almost anywhere. So if you look up Seeking and 74, you'll find it. If you look up just Seeking, you might end up on a dating site. So make sure you put up Seeking 74 and maybe even the initials JJ, and you'll find it on Amazon and every other platform. And then once you have the book, you can download the workbooks too. There's free workbooks you can download. So if you don't want to mess up your book, you can download the workbooks. They're beautiful and they have every question separated by each chapter, and you can use them in your own training classes with your girlfriends. If you teach yoga, you can use them all different ways.
Awesome. I love that teachers can use this in their own classes. And then you mentioned the Together We Seek community. Is that an online thing or just a live in-person thing?
No, I had made it online because so many of my teachers are all over the planet and I wanted people to be able to access them easily. So Together We Seek right now, you go in, it's a free platform right now. You can see all the different practitioners that I've interviewed. There's hundreds of women in there, most of which are mystics. And it's just a great way to just check things out from the beauty of
Beautiful.
your own home, your own desktop, your own tablet, your own phone.
Awesome. Well, I'll put all those links in the show notes so everyone can
Oh,
connect
thank
to
you.
you. Thank you so much again, JJ. We'll look
Thank
forward to next
you.
time. My pleasure. Awesome.